Super. So thank you for having me. Good afternoon. And I will talk to you today about my experience in working with Shakti. Shakti is a citizens movement. It is not an NGO. Instead, I've started it as a citizens movement, a group of citizens coming together for a cause at a voluntary level, and working on grassroots campaigns to highlight the low political representation of women and to improve the political representation of women. A series of campaigns that we ran were just before the Lok Sabha parliament elections in India last year, almost exactly a year back for the elections. And in the last 6 to 9 months leading up to the elections, we ran these campaigns. I formed the group and we ran these campaigns. So I want to share with you my experience and learnings in doing this, and hopefully it will inspire you to do your own political activism as well. So I'm going to share my screen now. Will you let me do that?
Just a moment.
Do that now.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. One second. I'm sorry, I'm trying to. Okay. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. You can see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So fundamentally, like Nepal is now, India is and has been a representative democracy, which means that people have the right to represent themselves. So oftentimes you get asked the question, but why do women want political power? Do you think you're better? Do you think you can do a better job? Are women really competent? Are women less corrupt? While these are fair questions to ask, the technical answer to all of this is that
Tara, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what happened there. Okay, India, like Nepal, is a representative democracy, and that means that we have a right to govern ourselves. We don't need to be any specifically qualified. We don't need to be better than a certain section of population. We don't need to be more competent than men. We have a right to govern ourselves. Every section of population has a right to be part of shaping the nation's destiny. Shakti got started as a citizens movement because this was the state of affairs in India. This is the state of affairs in India. We are 50% of the women are 50% of the population and 50% of the voters. In fact, the percentage of women voting just crossed the percentage of improved and crossed the percentage of men voting. More percentage of women voted in the last election than men did. But almost 90%, a little over 90% of the MLAs and MPs in the legislative state assemblies and the parliament are men, and only about 10%. Before this election, it was 11%. I'm going to talk to you about some of the things we did and so many others did to get it up to 14%. Because of this is the singular reason that we formed Shakti, and we wanted to run a series of campaigns to fix this problem. Everything about political campaigning and political change can be summarized as in three things. There is the timing, there is the image that is built about the campaign, about the organization, about the individual, and then there is the content that you offer. So although this had been the case since the last 70 plus years of Indian democracy, the numbers were always lower than 10% or about 10%. There is a reason that we started Shakti about 9 months before the Lok Sabha election, which brings me to timing. Today, if I start talking about women's representation, very few people will be willing to listen to it. The reason is because we are in the middle of many other things, including the health crisis, COVID. So if you talk about public health now, a lot of people will be willing to listen to it. So the reason we started Shakti when we did is because it was the run-up to the elections, which means the media and the people have their ears open to say what's going on about the elections. Any election-related news they're interested in. So that's the reason we timed it that way. I will talk to you about the image and the content in a bit. When you start a campaign on an issue, that issue already has a certain sort of image in people's minds. The issue already holds a certain value in people's minds. And if you look at India, and I know for a fact that in Nepal as well, the image of women in politics, there is a certain kind of an image around it. For example, there are myths that says there are so few women running in elections and only 8.9% of the candidates won. Maybe women are not even interested in politics. Maybe women don't want to run. Maybe they're not good enough. Maybe, 78 out of the 711 women won. Maybe those 78 won only because they were given very specific, safe seats where they were guaranteed to win because the party was doing well in those seats. Maybe women lack winnability. There is a lot of patriarchal myths that pre-exist in the consciousness, in the political consciousness in India that continue to exist. So I realized that if I'm going to change any of this, if we are going to build a citizens movement that fixes any of these problems, then we have to address these myths. These myths end up, creating a certain narrative of abuse, a certain narrative that, doesn't look at the problem for the data, that looks at the problem by sort of abusing the data, if you will. So, okay, why am I not able to move forward? Did the screen sharing change? Hello?
No, you are still the co-host.
Okay. Sharing is paused. Okay, you can see the screen now, right? So, for instance,
Tara, the slide is not changing. Is it the slide with the Shakti's logo in it?
No.
The screen. Can you stop sharing and once do it again? I think there's this. I think this. Yeah. Okay. Now it's there.
Okay. Okay. Do you see the screen change now?
Yes.
Okay. So this was the slide I was on when I said this is what motivated us to start Shakti. But even as we did that, we realized that, and the reason I started it at that time is because of the timing, right? And I was talking about the myths that were in the Indian political psyche, continue to be in the Indian political psyche, even as we started it. And we know we have to confront these myths in order to fix the problem, right? Maybe women are not interested, they're handpicked, and they lack winnability. And if you looked at the headlines in the papers, right, when they covered female candidates, they would have words like these. These are actual headlines from media, right?
Tara, it's still not showing.
Not showing again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, now it's there. Once you go in the screen share mode, I think it's not happening. Now we can see it.
Should I just keep it like this then?
Yeah, I think that way it will be better.
Okay. So if you look at the kinds of headlines that we were getting in the papers, you could see regarding the women in politics, they would talk about whether she colored her hair. They would refer to her in a very derogatory fashion, calling her a prostitute, or how many husbands has she had? What does she wear? Jeans and a top. even talking about her underwear and whether she dances, what kind of, beauty, all about her looks and the way she dresses. And this was happening right during the elections. So these are all kind of the barriers. If you start a movement, you have to know where you are positioned within the society to see how you can move forward. So one is the set of myths, the other is the kind of media coverage and therefore the image that was being built of female politicians. And then third, we had some institutional challenges, if you will. For instance, we have an election commission that is responsible for registering political parties and conducting elections. But the election commission doesn't have the right to stop parties from giving tickets only to men. So parties would go on fielding male candidates. 92% of all candidates fielded by any party on average, they're male candidates, which means women don't get a chance to stand, right? If you don't stand, how can you win? So look at these numbers. If only 711 of 8,048 running were women, that is because, look at that, that comes to less than 10%. That is the 8% that gets a ticket from the political parties. If you don't give me a ticket, it's not because I'm not interested. It's because women don't get tickets that they don't run. So, but the election commission doesn't have the teeth to do anything about it. Media, we just spoke about how media covers women. Campaign finance. Now, in places across Southeast Asia, including India, women are far poorer than men. They don't have the assets, they don't have the land, they don't have the houses, they don't have the capital in their hands. And even if they do, even rich women don't have the agency, which means they don't have the decision making power to say, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to go run for an election, right? There is a huge permission process involved from your husband, your father, the male members of the family control the finances, even if you have the finances. And campaign finance is such that it is extremely opaque. It's not transparent, and therefore it is extremely difficult to see if people are getting money fairly and they are using it properly. Then the party regulations, I already alluded to that. The parties are not disciplined or regulated to say we will give a fair amount of tickets and equitable ticket distribution to various sections of the population. So you can have a political party, you can go register it, and you can give tickets only to men. And therefore, the parliament now, as I pointed out, is 90% male, right? Right now it's 86% male, but it was 89% male when we started. And that means that it's really a manliament, I'd like to call it. So they don't pass the laws that are necessary to fix any of this, right? They don't find the reason, they don't find this a big problem. So because of many of these reasons, we have this systemic problem and we are not able to easily overcome it. So this is what Shakti was facing when it started. So we started Shakti with a single goal to say we want more women MLAs and MPs, and we want a threshold or a critical mass of representation. It is not enough to have one powerful woman. And India has had a powerful prime minister, we have had defense ministers, finance ministers, chief ministers, we still have chief ministers who are women. But you really need a critical mass to change things. In a village, sometimes you have an alcoholism problem, or you have a problem where girls are being harassed. It is not enough if one strong woman raises her voice. She can't fix things. But if you get a group of 30 women or 50 women, go and talk to the village panchayat or the village government, if you will, then you may be able to change something. The difference between the two is that critical mass. If there are we have 543 seats in parliament. If at least 1/3 of it, right, if 200 women were sitting in parliament, then a lot of different policies, a lot of different laws would be made, and the emphasis and the priority would look very different than having 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 women. So we started it as a non-partisan platform, meaning we're not aligned with any party. And it's a grassroots citizens movement, which means we run field campaigns, and any citizen of the country interested in this can join this movement. And the only goal of this is political power to women. And who would we work with? Who were our stakeholders? Our stakeholders were the political parties themselves, because we wanted them to give more tickets to women, fair number of tickets to women, field a fair number of women candidates. Our target audience was also the voters, to impress upon them that hey, there are a lot of worthy women candidates you can vote for. For instance, because of the campaign finance that I talked to you about, it means that women who are poorer don't have the same advertising money. Women don't have the same access to media. Women don't have the same access to hoardings, to publicity that men have. Which means, how will voters know about them that there is a worthy women candidate? There are worthy women candidates. So that was one thing. The third set of people we would work with are the women candidates themselves to promote them, not because they belong to a particular party, but all women, basically to highlight to voters that so many women are standing for election. Look at how qualified they are. Look at what they bring to the table and consider that before you go and vote. And the final thing that we also worked with is reservation for women. So the women's reservation bill, so that there can be a reserved number of seats in parliament where women are entitled to contest and only women are entitled. And for this, we needed to work with existing MPs to pressure them to bring the bill, to ask to bring the bill and vote for the bill. So Shakti is not a one-trick pony. There isn't only one set of people that we worked with, only parties or only voters or only women. We worked with multiple stakeholders and on multiple fronts. The same problem of increasing the number of women in parliament can be solved in many ways. You can solve it if all parties decide to give half the number of tickets to women, because half the population is women, problem is solved. Or if they bring in women's reservation, problem is solved. So the same problem can be solved through many ways. And Shakti was not particular about solving it in any given way. The goal is to any legal way to increase the number of women in parliament. So that is why we formed it. Now, what did we need to do? We need to figure out what issue to pick, when to pick it. Look at the number of issues that are available, right? We can work with parties, voters. There are so many things. There is a media problem. There is a perception problem with voters. Which issue do we pick? When do we pick it? Remember the word, the timing that I said, right? This is the timing issue that are every campaign you run. If you're going to go back to your town and run a political campaign to mobilize people to say, I want a street light, I want a public toilet, right? A certain harassment of sexual harassment of a woman happens, I want action to be taken. If you want to run a campaign and mobilize people, you need to worry about the timing of your campaign. You need to worry about the image of the issue, which is what I just spoke about. How are women in politics perceived? How is your issue perceived? Are other people concerned about the street light? Are other people concerned about not getting water in their pipe and having to go and fetch water? Right? And then you figure out the content of the campaign. You can't wake up one morning and say, today I'm going to run a streetlight campaign. It won't work. People won't show up. You won't be able to mobilize people. So these are some of the issues. Now, given an issue, how do we arouse emotion so that people come and work with us, right? How do we mold public opinion? How do we earn media? Remember that if you can mobilize 50 people to go give a petition to your local, town councillor or corporate town government, right? Whatever that is called, your city government or your village government, to say, I need, women's toilets, public toilets. Only 50 people and the government know about it, because those 50 people went and handed a letter to the government. If you can get media to cover that, lakhs of people will know about it. If lakhs of people know about it, then the pressure on the government to fix things will be very high. So the entire purpose of running political campaigns, of grassroots movement, is to exert pressure on the whoever is your stakeholder. In our case, sometimes it may be the MPs, sometimes it may be the parties. But for us to exert pressure, I don't need to get 20 lakh people or 10 crore people to join me, right? Nobody does that. But I do need to make sure there is enough pressure they feel the pinch. So the question is, how do we make that happen? So now, in order to do that, because Shakti is a volunteer-led movement, we started meeting. Now, this is an India-wide group. So what you see is the set of people that are located in Bangalore along with me. But you see the laptop there. We would have online meetings like Zoom, right? We would have online meetings where people from across India, from Delhi, from Mumbai, we had volunteers in Hyderabad, in Chennai, in so many cities would participate, and we would brainstorm and come up with these campaigns. So first, I'm going to take you through a few of these campaigns. But before that, this is the full set of campaigns we ran between November 2018 when Shakti was formed, and June 2019 when the elections happened, right? June, July 2019 when the elections happened and the first parliament and the next parliament was formed. So November we were formed, December was the first campaign. We ran a couple of campaigns in December, in January, and then February, March, multiple campaigns through when after the election results and the next parliament was formed, we ran our final campaign. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of different campaigns so you get a feel for how to do this, right? So one of the first things we needed to go after is what I talked about, which is the myths about women, right? If you don't start demolishing some of these myths, then you're going to get these questions over and over again as you run the campaign. Even then, you will get the questions because there are millions of people with these questions in their head. But if you set the stage by starting this way, it's a great introduction for people to know why you're doing this and what is it you're trying to do. So the first thing we organized was a panel discussion, right? A panel discussion. And we also started writing in media about this. The panel discussion with a whole bunch of politicians. I organized multiple panel discussions in multiple cities. This one, for example, the one on the left top that you see happened in Bangalore. It was the opening, sort of the very first debut campaign of Shakti. And the name of the discussion was, why are there so few women in politics? Is that because they're not interested? We went through these myths, basically. Is that because they're not interested? Is that because parties don't give them tickets? Is that because they're handpicked for safe seats? Is that because they lack winnability and cannot win a race, right? So we went through that discussion. And some of the amazing things that emerged were this. Whenever people say women are not interested in politics, we were, through the panel, through the women who are already MPs, who are already in politics, how they pointed out to us that, for instance, the ruling party, the BJP, has 3 crore women members. And 33% of the positions, party positions, are actually reserved for women, but they haven't even filled them. While they have 3 crore women members, they haven't even filled the positions, and they only gave 10% of the party tickets to women. Similarly, in the Congress, even the head of their social media or the BJP head of the women's wing, women like that didn't get tickets. Now, this is not only for the right wing or the center, on the left wing parties as well. The CPM, for example, has 1 crore women members, also gave very few tickets to women. Only 2 out of their 17 members in the Politburo, the top committee of the CPM, are women. In the CPI, only 13 out of the 75 in the central decision-making body are women. And then every time there is an election, all the parties form special committees for candidate selection, committees for campaign in charges, district in charges, campaign finance, and so forth. And you will see that these are 10, 15, 20 people committees with not even one woman or one token woman. Which means, what does all this tell you? One fine morning when elections are declared, women are not going to jump out of some tree to run for elections. Women who are already interested, like you, like many of you men who are interested in politics, are going to be joining political parties or already doing political work as independents. If you're already joined a political party and crores of women are there, they must be promoted within the party. They must be given opportunities and experience to be built within the party. If I can't run a district, if I can't run a town by recruiting other party members, by running my party unit within the city, how am I going to now run a whole state? I can't. So if you never give me party positions, if you don't train me in the leadership building within the party, and don't even give me tickets, then how can I run an election? Similarly, further myths were destroyed. Now, 78 out of 711 women won. Does that mean they were handpicked for safe seats, right? Did they win only because there's a guaranteed seats, which are sort of strongholds of certain parties, and women were given those seats? Well, in Odisha, in one of the states, for example, 33% of the seats, tickets were given to women. The party gave 33% of the tickets to women. No party can have 1/3 of the seats be safe. They will only have a handful of safe seats. If 1/3 of the seats are safe, you're guaranteed to win the election. And no party is in such a state today, or ever. Similarly, in West Bengal, 12 out of the 17 women they fielded won, which comes to 30%. Again, it's not possible to have 30%.
safe seats. In Gujarat, all the 6 candidates BJP fielded won. Where is a 100% hit rate possible? It's not even possible. In fact, one of the seats they won in Jamnagar was a seat that the Congress had always won. The first time in history that BJP won. And that went to a woman, right? So it is a very unsafe seat, if anything. In fact, in India, there is a tradition of prime ministers and chief ministers running in multiple seats because they are scared they themselves won't win. So when the prime minister of the country himself or the chief minister themselves are running in multiple seats because they are scared, where is the question of giving 711 women safe seats or 78 women safe seats? So there are million such examples. In Tamil Nadu, the 2 seats within the city of Chennai that were won by DMK went last 2 times to the opposition party. So there is a history of the party not winning, and yet the women won in those seats. So it is a complete myth and sort of patriarchal bias that tries to portray women as less capable in electoral politics. Another such discussion that we organized, and all of these women are in politics. And they come from across the parties, right? The woman on the left top, for example, Lalita, she is a spokesperson of the BJP. The woman right below that, Jagmati, is an independent now, used to be with the Communist Party. The woman right below that, Alka, is in Delhi. And she used to be with the Aam Aadmi Party, now Congress. So they span across the country and across parties. Some of them are from regional parties, national parties. And of course, we had men on the panel as well. And this topic, closer to the elections in February, was around how do you maximize the women elected to Lok Sabha. So before the tickets were given, we were doing different kinds of activities, like demolishing the myth, right? Like petitioning parties. We would go and give petitions to many, many parties to give more tickets to women, right? And we were trying to influence the ticket distribution and also to influence the reservation. But once the tickets were given, then we started running campaigns to maximize the number of women elected. So for instance, through these campaigns, we highlighted the fact that in India, it is now the 17th Lok Sabha. We've had 17 parliaments. In every single parliamentary election, women have won at a greater rate than men have won. If you look at the winning percentage of women and the winning percentage of men in any election, and take any row, you will see that the winning percentage of women, which is on the right most, is far higher than the winning percentage of the men, which is on. Take this row, take the 9th parliamentary election. Women won at 14%, men won at 8%. Take the 4th, women won at 43%, men won at 21%. Take the 15th, women won at 10%, men won at 6%. Even this current election after Shakti, men won at 6%, women won at 10%. So the safe seats, not giving tickets, claiming women are not interested in politics, it is all an excuse for political parties not to field women. In reality, women are winning at a far higher rate than men are winning in politics. Now, before the elections, we ran, one of the campaigns we ran was to try to influence the women's reservation bill. This was the very last parliament session before the elections. We ran a campaign called Call Your MPs. Okay, so I started with social media mobilization. Then we had volunteer meetings like the picture I showed you, many volunteer meetings where we planned the campaign. And the purpose was, let's call every single MP, all the 543 MPs, on the same day when the parliament is running, at the end of the day when parliament finishes, ask them that the next week to table the women's reservation bill and pass it so that women can get 33% reservation in parliament. Now, this was a very unique campaign because this has never been done before in the history of India. Nobody has ever called all their MPs. First of all, most Indians don't pick up the phone and call their MPs, right? People are very scared to talk to the politicians. Unless they have a real problem, they won't go talk to them. And even then, many people will, come together. Some 30, 50 people will go and give a petition in the MP's office. That is what people usually do. So the notion of picking up the phone and calling your member of parliament and saying, hello, sir, I'm Tara Krishnaswamy. I'm calling from Bangalore. You're a member of the parliament and I'm a citizen. And I humbly request you to table the women's reservation bill to ensure that at least 33% of women are in parliament. After all, we are 50% of the vote base. We should have proportional representation. So I kindly request you to do this. Will you do this, sir? Right? This is the call that we wanted volunteers to make. So what Shakti did was to tie up with many organizations, right? We ran social media campaigns, so many people aligned with us, and we also called many organizations around the country. Not organizations who were working on this, organizations that may have been educational NGOs, there were universities that tied up with us, there were electoral reform groups that tied up with us, there were tribal groups that tied up with us, there were groups working on women who had been rehabilitation of women who were abandoned or raped, or so do you see my screen?
No, Tara, the slides are not working again. This view is perfect.
Okay, but you see this screen, right?
Yes.
And you were able to see the previous one as well?
Yes.
Okay. So we tied up, you can see on the left side, the list of organizations that we tied up in the box. And these are organizations across India. And on the same day, on 27 December 2018, for 2.5 hours, about, I don't even know how many people, because remember that I don't know everyone. We're all joining online as well, right? Not everybody is in the same city. This is an India-wide campaign. So hundreds of people, more than 500 people is all I can say, called all our MPs simultaneously. We provided lists of MPs and MPs' phone numbers. We provided the script, the script that I just spoke to you about. When you call and they pick up the phone, what do you say? Hello, sir, I'm Tara Krishnaswamy calling from Bangalore, right? Good morning, good evening, how are you? Kind of a thing, right? And then what is the request you make, right? We provided the scripts in most languages in India, right? We provided the scripts translated into about 15 languages, and all of us exactly at the same time started calling our MPs one by one. Some of the phones were switched off, some of them were unreachable, some of them didn't pick up the phone, some were engaged, some picked up the phone and said, sorry, I'm busy, I can't talk now, I'll call you later. In some cases, the personal assistant picked up the phone. But we managed to have conversations with 127 MPs from across 23 different political parties and 21 different states in India. You see the stars? Those were the states where we reached the MPs. And they all said, yes, we will ask for the bill to be tabled. Now, it is not their decision. The government has to agree. But many MPs, 127 out of the 543 said they will get the bill to be tabled. In fact, the next day in Parliament, they all asked for the bill to be tabled. They were not given a chance to speak. The following day in Parliament, many of them went into the well to protest and say, table the bill, right? And they were even thrown out. So we were so thrilled because here is a request that we've made. There is no guarantee that the request will be a success, but for sure the representatives listened to us and asked for the bill to be tabled. You're able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
One of the other things to influence voter perception, I was telling you about the image, right? And we talked about the perception of women, the myths, right? It's not enough just to hold a few panel discussions about this. Remember that these discussions, they may seem like simple discussions to you, but they get extensive media coverage. When you arrange a panel like this, because there are so many MPs, it is happening with important people in the room, many papers and TV and live coverage. So tens of lakhs of people will end up seeing it. But because these myths have been built over decades and years, in order to demolish them, we need to do a lot of different things. Like I said, we're not a one-trick pony. You try every possible campaign. So one of the things we brainstormed was to say that we are going to run a survey, right? We ran on an app, we ran a survey across every single state in India. It included people like farmers, lawyers. It included people from the lowest strata of the population to the highest strata of the population. They could vote through SMS, they could vote through an app, and they could even go to their, village, community hall and vote, right? And we ran a survey to say a simple question: do voters want more women in the Lok Sabha, right? And 80% of the voters said yes. Now, why is this important? This might seem simple and even silly to you. This is important because imagine waking up tomorrow morning and you see in the headline of Nepal's most popular paper, newspaper and TV that says massive citizen survey shows that 80% of the voters want more women in the Lok Sabha, right? And this happens in January, and ticket distribution is going to happen in February and March. So you're a political party leader, you're a political party decision maker, and you see this survey in front of you next morning in the paper. Naturally, this will become a point of conversation within the party. Naturally, media will ask you about it and say, hey, did you see, sir, that you're the head of such and such party? Did you see that citizens wanted more women? Are you going to be fielding more women? Maybe he says, we don't know, we'll have to think about it. Then the media person will ask, but citizens say they want more women. Are you saying even if citizens want it, you won't field it, right? So that puts them in a spot, right? So there are many ways to apply pressure on the stakeholders. I told you we have many stakeholders, right? How do we apply pressure on parties to give tickets? We can directly go petition them, write a letter, take 50 people, go to every city where the party is and where the party head is and give them letters. We did that. You can also do things like, discussions where, this is brought out, the same issue is brought out. You can do a call your MP campaign. By now, every MP, which means the entire government knows about it. Remember, each of these campaigns gets coverage in media. You can release a survey. Furthermore, the survey, the way we released the survey was like this. We gave this to media and this got printed, which is that the green little mountain that you see below is the actual number of women from every state in parliament, right? And the white line that you see in the middle names the states. So the first state on the left is Andhra Pradesh. And you see that there are barely a handful of women in parliament, but the blue peak, which is how many women do voters want, right, is so high. Look at the delta between what they have and what they want, and every single peak is one state, right? And you see, look at this is Haryana, right? This is as many as the voters want. What they have is nearly zero now, right? The green line is, when it's really small, it almost looks like it doesn't exist. So this is very compelling way to pass along the same information that, hey, voters are not biased, they want women. In fact, voters keep electing women at a greater rate than men, right? And in fact, women's winnability is much higher. So, and women are joining parties left, right, and center. There are crores of women. So what's the problem here? Parties are not giving tickets. So if parties are not giving tickets, how do we fix it? We apply pressure on parties. Then, so these were some campaigns to apply pressure on parties. We also ran a campaign to apply pressure on the government for the women's reservation bill. Another campaign we ran, like I spoke about, one of the other systemic flaws we had was about the election commission, where the election commission was not holding parties to account, even if they gave tickets only to men. So we said, hey, parties should take responsibility, but election commission should also take responsibility. They are the neutral body. They should not allow a subversion of democracy. They should not allow a situation where they are running the elections and almost every candidate in the fray is a man. If 92% of the candidates are men, when I go look at the ballot, right, why does nobody look like me? Why does nobody look like 50% of the population, right? Why does nobody have the same lived experiences, daily life problems as 50% of the population? What kind of representative democracy is that? So we wanted to hold the election commission to task. So on Women's Day, March 8th of 2019, we ran a Women's Day campaign, and I'm momentarily going to do this so you can see it. It's a campaign that ran in multiple cities, right? In Ahmedabad, in Chennai, in Bhubaneswar, in Mumbai, in Bangalore. And you can see in each of these cities, we had 100, 200 women come together, right? And demand with the election commission, half is us, half is ours. Half is us, so half the seats are ours. From Delhi in the north to, Trivandrum and Chennai in the south, we ran it across about 16 districts and about 10 cities, right? In Maharashtra, we ran it in about 20 districts, 20 different districts of Maharashtra ran the campaign. So basically, by the time it was the run up to the elections. We started in November 2018, Shakti was formed. And by the time it was March, when, campaigns came to a halt, all the political parties and the political ecosystem and much of the public knew about Shakti, which never existed before that. Knowing about Shakti is not knowing about a person, it's knowing about the goal of Shakti, which is that women's representation should be the central issue in these elections. That is our real victory. Can we make women's representation be the central issue in this election? Which means media should talk about it, voters should talk about it, parties should talk about it, women should talk about it, men should talk about it. That is the sign of a successful campaign, step one of a successful campaign. So, what is unique about the way we ran campaigns is, and I've tried to put it like little stickies, which is that, we made the issue very emotional, right? If half is us, half should be ours. Look at this. This became very, very popular. This was part of every poster and social media campaign we ran, right? Where the Parliament House itself is tilted because 90 it's weighed down by the weight of the men, right? And the messages were very simple, like I just said, right? Half is us, half is ours, right? More tickets to women. And we had an inclusive volunteer-led planning for all these campaigns and try to come up with creative events, right? If you look at many of these events like this, the campaign against the Election Commission, they were very creative because they ran in so many cities, and we said Election Commission must act and give tickets to women. And all of us stood on one knee to say the Parliament itself is standing on one knee. You see this picture right in the center in Bhubaneswar. You will see all of us, or you see up in Bangalore, all of us are sitting on one knee, right? To say only one half of India is functioning if this is the way you function, right? So many of these were very creative. The entire poll and calling our MPs, all of us simultaneously, never been done before. So when you're a nobody like me, right? If you want to start running, like you, all of you, or want to become somebody, when you start running campaigns, this is the three things I asked you to remember. I'll come back to this, right? Before we move to the next segment of the presentation. The timing, why Shakti was started at a certain time was because elections were coming. So be aware of that. If you're campaigning for a street light and somebody gets hurt because the street is dark, they fell in a hole, or some child was injured, that is the time to start the campaign, right? If something happened while somebody went to fetch water, that is the time to start the water campaign. Image, like I said, you will have to demolish the myths. You have to recognize what is the image of the issue and then work on the campaign to demolish or rebuild that image. Content is what I talk to you in the campaign. If the campaign is content, if it is creative, then it will really become successful. So you have to think hard, which is the reason to have a volunteer-led grassroots movement, because I can't think of every idea on the planet, right? But all of us put our heads together, we can be really creative. So what is Shakti's success? I think the number one success I talked to you about, which is there was unprecedented buzz and chatter about women's representation during the election, which we never had. Second, two large parties, BJD and TMC, who we petitioned, gave almost a third to 40% of tickets to women. Never before in the history of India has this happened. Imagine major political, both these parties won in their states, right? These are the majority ruling parties of these states, and they ended up giving a large portion of the tickets to women. And we got 78 women elected into Lok Sabha, which is more than ever before. The highest we had had till then was about 64. This time there were 78 women. Of course, it's more than ever, but still it is too few compared to the 543. So we have taken some baby steps towards success, is what I'd say. Now, think about this, and I want to share some observations of what happened when we were working with women during their election campaigns. Remember, I said that one of the key stakeholders for Shakti is also the women candidates themselves, and how we can help them in terms of promoting all women candidates, right? And making voters aware of women candidates. In the process of doing that, there's some really interesting observations that we came up with that I want to share with you. So this part is going to be more interactive, and then I can start taking some of your questions when we are done with this. This is the campaign of a very successful MP who has been an MP many, many times, okay? So I want you to tell me what you see in this room. Is there anything unique you observe in this room?
There's only men.
There is only men. There are only men in this room.
There's no women participation there.
Sorry?
There are only men. There is no women participation there.
Exactly, right? He is addressing men. It's very common, right? Now look at this, okay? Do you see the candidate? Do you spot the candidate? She's sitting on a stage in the middle of the stage. Do you spot her? She's in green. Do you see her?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what is unique about this picture?
Like a mere
There's both men and women.
There's both men and women. What else?
But the women sitting on the stage is just like a mere representation.
There's like, sorry?
Only one woman there.
There's only one woman on stage,
on
right?
stage.
Yeah. It tells you, it's a stark telling tale of how political parties are. Run by men, populated by men, making women completely invisible. But still, you see a large section of women in the audience. They are segregated, but you see a large section of women in the audience, which is a recognition that when woman is a candidate, look what happens, right? Now look at this. This is again a winning candidate from Maharashtra. And look at the stage setup, right? Very similar to the other one. Absolutely no women on stage. As if his party has only men and as if his party caters only to men, right? Now, these are just examples. This is not to say this particular party is that way. These are examples, and the examples I'm giving you are from all the many parties across India, right? So when the woman is a candidate, there is one woman on stage. When the man is a candidate, there's no man at all on stage. Now, but you see a huge number of female voters sitting in the audience, which means what she talks about better have some relevance to the women as well. Now look at Navneet Singh Rana. She was an independent candidate in Maharashtra. Isn't this a simply mind-blowing picture?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this so unique?
All women.
So colorful.
Yeah, women.
Women.
All women.
Women.
Yeah, women on stage, women in the audience. Do you see men?
Yes.
At the back.
Yeah, at the back.
That is the most unique thing. Have you ever seen a meeting where the men are not dominant and are at the back and the fringes?
No.
Never see political meetings like this.
Possible.
Correct. You never see political meetings like this. Okay, now I need to do this again. Sorry. Okay. Do you see the change or no?
Yeah.
No. Yes.
Okay. You see the change slide, right?
No, it's not changed.
Okay. Now you do.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually Shashi Tharoor of Kerala. He's an MP. He's a very, very popular and female-friendly MP. He's known in general to be a friendly MP. And he has a huge women fan base and audience, right? He is known to be very pro-women and progressive, right? He is doing a rally during the campaign. This is a campaign rally, which means he's going out on a campaign vehicle, meeting voters on the street, trying to canvass for votes. Again, what you see is a whole bunch of male voters surrounding him, correct?
Yes.
Now look at her rally and what happens. What happens to the crowd near the campaign vehicle when the candidate is female? Women feel emboldened to approach her, right? And therefore talk to her about their problems. If you don't feel comfortable approaching even a friendly candidate, you can't talk to your representative about problems. And what is the whole purpose of representation? You're supposed to solve my problems. How can you solve my problems if you don't even hear of my problems? If I'm not even in the audience, right? And if I'm, not even allowed to address the women in the audience, how can you solve my problems? You cannot, because you don't even know what they are. And look at the difference when the woman is the candidate. Look at this. She very specifically takes time to interact with the women in the village. She is going door to door. This is a door-to-door campaign. You have fewer people, right? She's doing a community campaign. And she takes the time to speak to the women. And the women are comfortable approaching her. Look at this. Young women want to take a selfie with the candidate. Very rare if the candidate is male, because you're a little uncomfortable. There is a little distance. Whereas here, look how comfortable they are. Look how physically close these women are to the candidate, right? They're all different parties, as I said, right? The reason you have this kind of comfort level, it's the same comfort level he has with the men. right? It is not to say that men cannot represent women and vice versa. It is to say that is why you have a representative democracy. So you have all kinds of people in the country, you have all kinds of voters. Some people are more comfortable, some people are less comfortable coming forward. It's like a class or a family, and you want everybody to get a voice. You want everybody's grievances to be heard so that the governance can actually address everybody's problems. And so if you don't have enough women, there is no chance of doing that. Now, this is the week before the campaign. The week before the campaign is the most important thing, in an election, because in a campaign, there is only one thing you can never get more of. And what is that? To run a successful campaign, you need money, you need volunteers, you need money, you need volunteers. But you can get more money and you can get more volunteers, right? If you do the right things. But there is one thing, no matter what you do, you cannot get more of. What is it?
Vote, interaction, network.
No. Okay, you cannot get more interaction because of what?
Proper vision.
No.
Media coverage.
Discrimination.
No. What is the one thing in a campaign? As every day progresses, it keeps decreasing. You can never... Time, correct. Even on the last day, you can get a high-profile donor to give you money. Even on the last day, you can pay people to come and campaign for you if you don't have volunteers. But time, once the election date is announced, can only decrease and you will never, never get it back. So time is extremely valuable in a campaign because depending on who you campaign to, you may get more votes or less votes. If you go and campaign in an area which is a huge supporter of the opposition, it doesn't matter what you do, you stand upside down, you're not going to get those votes. On the other hand, if you spend that precious time working with people who think positively or are doubtful but may vote for you, then you may be able to convert them into votes, right? You may be able to guarantee your votes. They're more likely to come out and vote instead of staying at home and saying, what difference does it make? So who you spend time with during a campaign determines your win or lose. And the last week of the campaign is precious because all you have is a week. You can't now change the plan, right? Every day is elapsing. And look at where Chinta Anuradha spends her time. These are all the things she did during the last week, right? Not all the things, these are many of the things. Every single one of these is a different thing. And every single one of these she has spent with women, is women's groups, is groups of women. You do see some men, but you see so many women in the interactions that she is having.
I have a question.
Yes.
So is there like, if the candidates spend all the time with women, is there like a chance of isolating the male voters because of, having the image of just preferring to get female voters as a candidate?
No candidate will spend all the time with just women because that's a bad idea, like what you said, and also because you want to address all voters. So even male candidates will spend time with women. It is not like he doesn't meet women at all, but this is representative of how a meeting can look. There are 500 people in this room or 1,000 people in this room, and you don't see any women. But when he goes door to door, he will meet women. When he does neighborhood meetings, he will meet women. But what is the proportion of women? What is the importance he gives to women, right? Versus this. If you did half and half, you really want to do that. You want to do half and half. All this shows you is that the women candidates give importance to women. It doesn't tell you that women candidates don't meet men. All it shows is that the women candidates give due importance to women, right? And you must also remember that in the last week, you want to go to people who are most likely to vote for you. So she picked these and she won, right? So obviously she made the right choice. Last week, and this is Harsimrat Kaur in Punjab, the number of, there are men in all these meetings, but just the overwhelming number of women in these meetings as well, right? Again, on the right corner, upper corner, you see a meeting where there are so many women sitting up front and the men are standing in the back, right? She's addressing both of them, but she's making sure there's a lot of women in her audience. Last week, this is Sunita Dugal. Look at who she's meeting in a local community. She's doing yoga in a park with women. right? She is just meeting. If you look at the full photograph, you will see some men as well. But the point is that you will see a lot of women because they are making sure there are women in the campaign. So the thing I want to tell you is this, and these are all winners, by the way, right? So the thing I want to tell you is there are two aspects, two advantages to fielding women for that a party gets, right? The advantage that the party gets is that they get to reach out to the female voters much more than their male candidates can reach out to female voters. Even a very, very friendly male candidate, even if he wants to reach out to female voters, not every female voter wants to come forward and they're not going to mob him. But you feel comfortable mobbing a woman, right? So, a party, from a party perspective, there is a certain advantage to fielding women because the other 50% you can reach out better. But the biggest advantage is that you and I, as voters, feel more comfortable approaching her and telling her of the problems. If I want to say that, look, we need a law that makes sure that rapists are punished promptly and in a harsh fashion, I feel much more. I feel that she would be convinced much more easily than convincing somebody else, right? And this is me, and I feel not somebody who is exposed to the world, somebody who's comfortable talking to politicians. A lot of women in villages are not. So one of the things that India has discovered in the past uh, about 25 years, we have had reservation in local politics for local governments, for village panchayats, and for city corporations. We have 33 to 50% reservation for women. We don't have it for parliament. This is what Shakti was fighting for, but we have it at the local levels. And one of the biggest transformations that has resulted in is that women in the villages and cities feel comfortable airing their problems, their grievances are heard. So this is not just about the parties, it's also about the voters. And the third most important thing, if you step back and forget about men and women and ask yourself, what is the purpose of a democracy? A democracy, the purpose of a democracy is to serve its citizens through an elected government. Now, if you're not serving half the citizens properly, because you don't know what their problems are, because they're not coming forward, because you don't have proper representation, then how can you be an effective government? How can you be an effective democracy? So this actually furthers democracy when democracy is fair to both genders and all demographics of the population. So the advantage of having women in politics is that in women's campaigns, you have many more women doing decision making. What meeting should I have? Whom should I meet? How, scheduling these meetings, right? As opposed to creating campaigns that look only like this, making sure campaigns also look like this, right? Women are in campaign teams and decision making. Women do the messaging and communication. When I have an audience like this, I cannot only be talking about, what do you say? I cannot only be talking about issues that concern only men. I have to talk about the fact that are girls getting enough education, enough jobs? Are they getting enough opportunities in sports? Right? Are women farmers? In India, most farmers are women. Are women farmers getting due recognition? Right? So the topics, the messaging, the communication also changes, right? So when you have women in campaigns, there's a lot of excellent side effects that you get. You do outreach to women's networks, which means a lot of new groups are brought into the political ecosystem, right? Your female audience in roadshows and rallies. So the effect of groups like Shakti, not only Shakti, is that we not only have concrete outcomes like buzz about women's representation or more tickets to women or just more women elected, right? There are intangible outcomes like this, that more women end up participating in politics itself, the political ecosystem, not just as candidates, but in the entire ecosystem and the support system that surrounds it. So that really is a huge change in the way democracy is conducted in India. So I leave you with this, and if you have any questions, we can talk about it.
Thank you so much, Tara. Guys, if you have any questions, please raise your hand in participant box and then I'll call out your name. That way we can do it in an organized manner. Yes, Supriya.
Hi, Tara.
Hi.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's really, I'm really pleased to meet you this way.
My pleasure.
I have a question regarding like, um, how much do culture factor into the participation of men during women's campaign, like or women in men's campaign, like how much that affect into like having those kind of
It's a
results?
great question. Like I showed you.